Hi, good morning. I am Dr. Ben Newman. I'm a coronavirus researcher, and I'm talking to you live from the worst hotel room I've ever stayed in, for sure. It's a peach, yeah. Um, yeah. Features such as the hot water tank. The bottom fell out yesterday, and they haven't replaced it. The headboard came down on my head when I laid down. The soap was wet inside the wrapper and appeared to have maybe been rewrapped. No towels, lights don't work, etc. Yeah, but it's probably not the worst in the world because the world is a big place and it has a large underbelly, and this is only a little part of it. Anyway, let's get to your questions. The first question is from Barbara. All right, and the question is, do you have any information about the CanSino vaccine? Well, sure we do. This is one of the old ones. Yeah, it's been around for a while. So this is made in China, and it is essentially a copy of, or is so similar to, it might as well be a copy. It's like the same idea. It's not that anybody's stealing from anybody else, it's that they're all stealing from papers 10 years ago. It's just like the AstraZeneca vaccine, just like the Johnson& Johnson vaccine, just like the Russian Sputnik V vaccine. And yeah, it's going to be about equivalent to those. It seems to have similar efficiency numbers. So it's an adenovirus shell with a piece of DNA inside, and we're just using that shell to deliver the DNA into your cells, where it's going to work like the mRNA vaccines, just with one extra step where you turn the DNA into the mRNA. Yeah, so yeah, basically it should be about as good as the rest of those. And the rest of the question was, so this is talking about somebody who was had COVID in November, was hospitalized pretty badly, and doesn't want to experience that again. And yeah, I like that. I like that line of reasoning. So the coronavirus nidovirus conference was just this past Monday and Tuesday, and there were some really good talks there that are relevant to this. Several people were showing that essentially the white blood cell response, the T cell response, and the memory B cell response are the things they call them. And those, they drop pretty sharply at the beginning, but then they just kind of level out and they seem to last pretty long. So yeah, there's still going to be some immunity, almost certainly, which is something that we had this part of the curve, and so we would assume that it would just keep going like that before. So that was a surprising thing. The other thing was that they looked at people who had been vaccinated and then got ill versus people who just got ill. And the people who had been vaccinated and then got sick made incredible amounts of antibodies. And they also had, even if they didn't have much of an antibody response, which is how they got sick basically, they had pretty good T cell responses. And so it looks like that's the mechanism where vaccines can actually protect you. And yeah, even for people who have already had the virus, there's no reason to think it wouldn't work in the opposite way. If you had the virus and then get the vaccine, you will probably have heroic amounts of immunity, and actually far more than anybody else who didn't catch the virus. Yeah. I'm not saying you should catch the virus, I'm saying the opposite, but this is like a making the best of a bad situation kind of thing. So it looks like it's a good booster. And the other cool thing was that there was talk about, and not as much data as I'd like, but there are populations of cells, antigen presenting cells. So these are things that will show a little bit of spike to a young white blood cell so that they can learn and get better at making an antibody or, a T cell receptor to go out and attack it. And there are some of these things that can actually hold on to bits of the protein. They'll just keep the same one, and every day they'll get it out and show it to the cells again. And then they'll tuck it back inside, keep it very safe, like dust it off, put it on a little doily so that, nothing bad happens to it. And so you get evolving responses. The initial response that you make is pretty good, but your body will continue to make responses to some of the antigen that you've stored behind, because there's no RNA or DNA that lasts. There's just a little bit of protein that these cells are working really hard to like curate and keep safe. And that's really interesting. You see a dramatic improvement of the quality of the antibodies that come out long after the infection is gone and any residual vaccine is gone. So, yeah, that's better news than I would have hoped for. So I think CanSino is fine. If there are any concerns, it would just be if the person you're talking about has any history of platelet factor 4 autoantibodies. Then that one may not be recommended, but that's an easy test that can be done at hospital, and that's really rare. That's like a little less than 1 in 1 million. So I think, yeah, I think it's gonna be all right, and yeah, it works about as well as any of the other ones, which is to say pretty well. So thank you very much. This has been Ask Dr. Ben.